YouTube is a platform filled to the brim with stories of creators hitting it big before having a breakdown, then falling into irrelevance as fast as they appear, often becoming lolcows in the process. Not everyone can be a cockroach like me after all. A person that appeared to be going down this route was Quinton Reviews, a young man who found fame in the early days of the so-called commentary community, before getting his very own Kiwi Farms thread for sad posting, moral grandstanding, shoehorned political stances, and fighting with other creators for no reason. These events essentially torpedoed his once fruitful online career, with his audience abandoning the channel. People, including myself, thought he was going to be yet another Fallen Titan. But to everyone's surprise, this story ended up having a happy ending, as he eventually pulled himself out of depression and rebuilt his audience from scratch in a brand new genre, while gaining tens of millions of views in the process. Because of my amazement over this rebounding, I sat down with Quinton for a comprehensive discussion on what made himself an anomaly in this cutthroat online landscape. And to properly tell this insane story, we'll first have to start at the very beginning. But before we go any further, I just want to tell you how much I love today's sponsor, Extra Wallets. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the old George Costanza meme from Seinfeld where he had a wallet filled with so much crap it literally exploded in the middle of the road. This is how wallets were for many decades, but in recent times, people wanted something more. This is where Extra comes into play, where they're a good middle ground where they're not too simplistic that you can barely fit anything in them, and they're not super gigantic where you could barely fit them in your pocket. They have a nice elastic band where you could keep your cash, a little pocket where you could put anything you need, and a pop-out area where you could see all of your credit cards with one click. On top of this though, they also have the Finder card now, which allows you to never lose your gear again. Whether you have it in your wallet or some other personal item, if you're 300 feet away or less, you can ring it and hear where it's at. On top of this, you can see the tracking device's map location on your phone and find your lost item anywhere in the world with the global Apple Find My network. On top of this, you'll never leave your bag, wallet, or passport behind, as you'll get a notification the moment you move too far away from your tracker. With this new addition, I truly think this makes Extra Wallet the best wallet company in the entire world. And with Father's Day coming up, I think this is a pretty nifty item to give your dad. And to get up to 50% off your order, just click the link in the description down below and use the code TheGamerFromMars at checkout. This is a product I truly vouch for, and I hope that a lot of people buy it so I could keep on getting sponsored by them. Quinton Hoover was born on December 7th, 1996. Growing up, he was surrounded by much of the same media as many from his generation, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and so on. But Quinton also had his own nostalgic property that was unique to him alone. You see, both of his parents were very creative people. His father in particular was an amateur actor and director, making his own movies long before the birth of his son. Quinton grew up watching these tapes, instilling him early on with a fascination for filmmaking. Quinton has expressed a sense of loneliness and isolation in his childhood, leading him to fill his days with TV and movies. Nevertheless, he took what few friends he did have and began making his own home videos. As he reached high school, he had accumulated a large enough friend group and developed a strong enough skill set to begin making more ambitious projects. Some of these still exist on YouTube even to this day.
I think I saw my first YouTube video in like 2006 maybe. We were all obsessed with this one YouTube channel and it was called, I think, Dark Sword 64. It was these little live action skits of them doing kind of a sped up retelling of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or the Kingdom Hearts games. That just really latched onto us as something that was fun to watch. So I mean, YouTube immediately to me was a calling, even from the moment I saw it when I was like 10.
His earliest videos, which he made when he was around 15 years of age, were created to coincide with the 50th anniversary of one of his favorite television programs, Doctor Who. These uploads were clearly inspired by other early internet reviewers, and Quinton directly cites Linkara as his major influence.
Everyone has to point out, wow, his impression of you is so accurate.
He reviewed content from across the British franchise, both from the show and from expanded media.
The reason I deleted them is because I was 15. But because I look old, everyone thought I was like 30. And, there were some edgy jokes I didn't like.
A few years later, in 2016, Quinton rebooted the series with a review of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Island of Misfit Toys. Just from this one upload, we can see a few of the aspects that would follow Mr. Hoover for the rest of his career. For one, a joke referencing his political leanings.
We all find our own ways of celebrating them. For some of us, that's spending time with our families around a lit, roasting fire. And for some, it's about persecuting and judging those with different opinions and beliefs than them.
And 2, a willingness to speak candidly about his life in a way most other YouTubers in his genre wouldn't be at the time.
Growing up, I didn't have many friends.
Beyond that, though, the style isn't much different from his early reviews. Although it would be a disservice to say they're on a similar level of quality, as Quinton had clearly been refining his technique in that few-year span. He continued uploading these media critique videos over the following months, incorporating skits with his family and friends to further showcase his desire to tell stories rather than just analyze them. One of Quinton's most popular uploads from this time period was his review of the film Grow Up, Timmy Turner, a live-action adaptation of The Fairly OddParents. While this was a standard example of his content at the time, it managed to take control of the algorithm and skyrocketed in popularity. In addition to the reviews, he also uploaded the occasional brief meme. One of these videos poked fun at Zarna Joshi, who had been going viral at the time amongst popular anti-SJW content creators due to her infamous humongous outburst.
This person just spoke to me in a sexually harassing way.
I did not.
Yeah, he did. How dare you! How dare you!
Now, this wasn't exactly some huge political statement since very few people were publicly siding with Zarna. But the fact that Quinton made this video at all showed that he was probably closer to the center-left in terms of online political discourse, not necessarily looking to rock the boat very much. While these review-style videos did decently well for Quinton, his first big break came on September 18th, 2016, with an upload titled, "How Leafy Missed the Chance to Redeem Himself." This was his first foray into analyzing the content and behavior of other YouTubers rather than just large studio projects.
When you look at the Leafy content cop as a whole, instead of focusing on specific moments like a fucking moron, the thesis is that Leafy's issue is that he pushes out a lot of, quote, satire at other people, while never being able to take or make jokes at his own expense.
With this, Quinton had gotten in on the ground floor of a new budding genre called YouTube commentary.
Really, iDubbbz was the main guy I knew who was doing it with Content Cop, and I used to watch Content Cop a lot. So when iDubbbz had beef with him, I just did a quick video kind of being like, here's my hot take, you know. And for some reason, that got caught in like the algorithm. I was just one of the first people to discover kind of picking up the dust after that storm.
And with his Leafy opinion piece, Quinton had put himself on the map as one of the most promising new voices in the community. Shortly after this upload, Hoover posted The Future of Quinton Reviews, in which he expressed dissatisfaction with the content he had been creating previously, and his relief about how well the new video performed.
When I made the Humongous video, I realized that I didn't want to become a meme channel. And when I made this latest video, I just felt proud. I felt like these people who have come to my channel are people that I want to make happy. And they're people who I want to make content for.
This is what could be considered as the first golden age of Quinton Reviews. Shortly afterward, he further staked his claim in the commentary community with a two-part critique of Grade A Under A, a YouTuber who had been making waves at the time. This was a slightly riskier undertaking as Grade was much more respected than Leafy. Even so, these videos also received a great deal of acclaim, gaining over 1 million views apiece, and being widely praised for how well-reasoned they were. Of course, Quinton didn't exclusively create commentary videos during this time, as he continued his variety output of movie reviews and meme content as well. I actually have a personal connection to one of these, specifically his upload, Every Gamer from Mars video, which I am not bitter about at all. Can you give me some insight on what made you make the Every Gamer from Mars video?
I feel like the video was nowhere near as malicious as everyone asserts it to be. I just have always found tangents really funny, and I was like, what if he kept doing that? What if it got to the point that he was on like 6 tangents?
One of the most successful people of recent memory has been Felix Schellberg, better known as PewDiePie.
The Third Reich was a period of rule in Germany from 1933 to 1945.
It's hard to overstate the unique nature of the Quinton Reviews channel at this time. While it's true that his commentary videos were by far his most popular, the fact that he was able to maintain a steady presence on YouTube while releasing such a wide variety of content was unheard of when the general wisdom was to stick with one genre. As his star continued rising, Quinton made friends with several other commentary YouTubers, some of whom may be surprising to modern-day viewers.
Then we have Turkey Tom, a small commentary channel that I've watched from time to time. He's based in animation, and he basically does commentary about whatever he feels like, and he makes me chuckle from time to time. I feel like he has a lot of potential.
However, even though Quinton was riding high on his online success, that didn't necessarily translate to happiness in his personal life.
I think I was a little unstable. I was living with my parents. I was one of the only kids in town that didn't go off to college. One of my best friends from high school went to Columbia. I was in a basement, shooting YouTube videos and getting in fights with my parents every day, and just trying to convince myself that it would eventually all pay off and I'd make a career out of it. And luckily I was right, because otherwise I just would have been stuck forever in this dinky small town. There were certainly days that I was lonely and unhappy, and creating has always been passion for me. So I think I used YouTube as an escape from kind of the dead-end life that I felt like I was stuck in. And in some ways I attempted to then offload my entire life to be like, I'm just the YouTuber.
It was perhaps this sense of loneliness that made Quinton more comfortable with sprinkling hints of his political and social leanings into his content. For example, in his video about the infamous creator Matt Haas, he included a brief rant about how he used to believe in the concept of the friend zone.
When I was a teenager, I was a hormonal mess that was so caught up on the fact that I didn't have a girlfriend that I decided to blame all of womankind for this horrific attack on my love life. I thought I had been friend-zoned by too many heartless harpies that would only go after all those jerks who didn't really care about them at all. Except, they probably did. I just presumed that they didn't because they weren't me.
While some viewers did start to pick up on this habit of Quinton's, he was still a respected enough member of the community that people chalked it up as nothing to make a big deal over. Even so, it's important to understand the overarching context of this era. Anti-SJW was still the most popular social leaning amongst commentary YouTubers and audiences. If Quinton continued down this path, eventually he would strike a match that would blow the powder keg completely. One of Quinton's first truly controversial takes came in 2017 with the upload, "I hated the politics of VidCon." What needs to be understood is that he had an annual tradition of documenting his experiences at the massive YouTube convention every time he attended. While these were normally simple and fun vlogs, this particular event was different. During a panel hosted by feminist video game critic Anita Sarkeesian, anti-SJW YouTuber Sargon of Akkad and several of his friends decided to take seats in the audience, where the speakers would be most likely to notice them. This strategy worked, resulting in an infamous moment in which Anita referred to Sargon as a garbage human. On top of his normal VidCon vlog for the year, Quinton decided to upload a second video dedicated solely to the situation. This made a decent amount of sense, considering he knew a decent amount of people who attended the panel, although opted against going himself. Hoover seemed well aware that he was kicking the hornet's nest by uploading this think piece, since he had a decent amount of criticisms towards Sargon.
Now, Sargon himself released a video saying that no one who went planned for her to respond like that, and that they weren't really looking for a reaction, they just wanted to hear what she had to say, and that's a lie. I was there, I talked to people who were going, I knew the plan. Plan was, people that don't like Anita Sarkeesian were gonna sit in the front row, and she was gonna have a funny reaction. Don't pretend that that's not what you were trying to do.
In actuality, though, the video is quite middle of the road, hurling just as much criticism at Sarkeesian and the response by VidCon, if not more so. Regardless, the fact that he released it at all ruffled some feathers. Suddenly, Quinton had made himself a political figure, and what's more, he had done so by criticizing the actions of the people who consider themselves his friends. While this wasn't nearly the final straw, it was enough to make some people never see him in the same light again.
I think I've always been a political person. When Bernie lost in 2016 and Hillary became the nominee, I had kind of a post-cynicism. And I think getting out of the basement, seeing real people, having actual conversations about politics in real life, that I would guess woke me. When your entire lifestyle is that you're in a basement on the internet all day, and then suddenly you're going on trips, you're flying out to California, you're meeting people, it really does change the shape of your mind, where you're like, wow, I'm coming of age, my world perspective is evolving, and I don't think that's a rare or exceptional thing. I just think that I accidentally documented the process.
A few months later, in February of 2018, Quinton uploaded his review of the incredibly contentious Star Wars film The Last Jedi, in which he gave it glowing praise. If you were on the internet at all in 2018, you can probably guess that this opinion did not go over well with a lot of people. It didn't help that Quinton opened his video by being rather dismissive of people who didn't like the movie.
So why is it commonly considered to be a terrible movie? Well, for some odd reason, it's become a meme that the movie is bad. In the same way that it's a meme that Tide Pods taste good.
What happened next was a tangled web of intersecting dramas that I will do my best to explain as concisely as possible. Basically, a YouTuber by the name of I Hate Everything also made a video around the same time praising The Last Jedi. This got the attention of a creator named Rags, who despised the film and made a response to IHE's review. This then prompted a third individual known as The Right Opinion to make his own video responding to Rags' response to IHE, and he decided to include Quinton in on this project. The Right Opinion's video was widely criticized by Rags and his fanbase, with Hoover's segment in particular facing heavy scrutiny. Not only did people still accuse him of being far too dismissive of those who didn't like The Last Jedi, but he was doubly criticized for seemingly misrepresenting many of the statements made by Rags. Looking back on it, it's really ridiculous how over the top this controversy became, considering everyone was just fighting over a Disney movie. In the aftermath of this controversy, The Right Opinion decided to appear on Every Frame of Pause, a livestream series hosted by a friend of Rags. Quinton, on the other hand, remained silent despite the fact that his comments were by far the most widely criticized. This led onlookers to accuse Quinton of throwing The Right Opinion under the bus to face the wrath of the Star Wars fandom.
It seemed like as soon as that came out, he was suddenly friends and doing podcasts with these guys. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. And suddenly I had all these people coming to my comment section to say, well, I think The Right Opinion is a good guy. I think you're a piece of shit. Because The Right Opinion said on his podcast that you ad-lib material for the video. I felt a little bit like, that it was easier for those guys to just make me the bad guy of the whole thing. And to be fair, I was a very headstrong, stubborn man, and I shouldn't have gotten involved in it at all, and I let the intrusive thoughts win.
Ultimately, while this particular incident did cause quite a commotion, it was mostly confined to one community and allowed Quinton to escape relatively unscathed. In fact, it was around this time that he began one of the most popular and enduring series his channel ever saw, Fallen Titans. This was essentially a marriage between the two styles of content he had been producing thus far. Taking a look at the careers of the once great stars of YouTube, or occasionally old internet trends that Quinton personally had nostalgia for. This series was a massive success, with the first video covering Ray William Johnson raking in over 1 million views. Even though they may have accumulated big numbers, things weren't perfect as the audience's takeaway from Fallen Titans didn't match Quinton's intention with the series.
It got me to where I am today, and so I wouldn't go back and undo any of it. But I think I would, if I were to redo Fallen Titans, I'd be a lot less snarky. I think it was a little bit too... It was really me trying to capture, when you're 22 and you're talking with your friends and you're like, hey, remember those piece of shit videos we used to watch on YouTube? Da-da-da-da. Yeah, this sucked. But now I look back and I go, I wasn't really giving enough merit to, Tomska, and all these other animations. And even Ray William Johnson, I'm like, I didn't give him enough credit.
Now, as Quinton himself implied, this misinterpretation wasn't entirely the fault of viewers. Not only was the title of the series somewhat negative sounding, but early on he was very harsh on the creators he discussed. In one particularly infamous example, the third episode of Fallen Titans covered the nostalgia critic in the wake of the Change the Channel controversy. Quinton's pointed language used against Doug Walker and Channel Awesome as a company drew a lot of ire from the fanbase the nostalgia critic still maintained, and served to paint Fallen Titans as nothing more than a drama series. Nevertheless, it persisted for many years, becoming a staple of the Quinton Reviews channel. As you can see, many of Quinton's uploads from around this time were harsher in tone, and generated a much more controversial and vitriolic response from viewers. His reputation in the commentary community had also been shaken. All it would take was one disastrous moment to send him hurling off the pedestal he had been placed upon just a year prior. By the end of 2018, Quinton uploaded his review of the YouTube original movie, The Thinning: New World Order, starring Logan Paul. While most of this video was fairly standard stuff, there was one bit in particular that stood out like a sore thumb. While discussing how the film seemed to be using its villain as an allegory for Donald Trump, Quinton ground the review to a halt in order to make his stance on the president perfectly clear.
So, here's the thing. I fucking hate Trump. He embarrasses me every day. He makes us all look like backwards idiots, and frankly, the fact that he got elected means that we probably are all backwards idiots. He's ruining people's lives. He's making horrible racist decisions, which are probably going to have long-lasting repercussions long after he's out of office. Overall, I would be a much happier person if we found a way to deport him from every position of power that he has ever had.
This segment was quickly clipped and spread across social media. People had already begun to notice Quinton's tendency to inject his political views into videos, but this was on a completely other level. Even those who agreed with what he had to say admitted that the rant seemed out of place, interrupting the flow of the rest of the video. The clip became the prime example used by Quinton detractors for why they hated him, and the first few seconds became a meme in the commentary community.
I fucking hate Trump.
I don't really regret that I did it. I regret the delivery. So it should have literally been like, I just want to say real quick, I don't like Trump. I didn't vote for him. He's a piece of shit. This movie sucks though, you know. And that kind of honesty I still think is part of my brand. But yeah, the way I did it was just stupid.
Even with how widespread the clip became, if it had been an isolated incident, Quinton may have been able to recover. But instead, it was just the beginning of the pot-stirring statements he would make across the coming days.
Saying that every angry gamer is trying to be James Rolfe is like saying that every racist gamer is trying to be JonTron.
On November 4th, he posted a Twitter thread about his thoughts on conservative commentator Ben Shapiro making an appearance on PewDiePie's show Meme Review. So this is going to be a controversial opinion again, but I'm disappointed about PewDiePie deciding to have Ben Shapiro on his channel. Ben Shapiro is a transphobic and occasionally racist egghead. When you have him on your show and humanize his platform, you help him grow. It's important to understand the full cultural context of this statement. Around this time, PewDiePie had been embroiled in a wealth of controversy. As the most subscribed to channel on the website, a few journalists took it upon themselves to highlight some of his edgier, more offensive comments and use them as proof that YouTube was promoting hateful content. This, along with other controversies, led to a large group of companies pulling their advertising from the site, resulting in hundreds of YouTubers taking a massive hit in their revenue in an event called the Adpocalypse. Because of this, most creators were throwing their support behind PewDiePie, and to imply any wrongdoing on his part was to give credence to the advertiser boycott. This was not the only negative thing Quinton had to say about PewDiePie either. Just a month later, he uploaded a video titled Quinton Reviews T-Series, which requires some more cultural context. You see, it was also during this time that Pewds was in danger of losing his position as YouTube's biggest creator to a channel called T-Series, an Indian brand that primarily released music videos. Viewers found this unacceptable, believing that the channel with the biggest subscriber count should be an individual creator, not a large faceless corporation. Quinton, however, decided to play devil's advocate and make a video in support of T-Series.
Anyways, I guess the too long didn't watch this video is subscribe to T-Series.
So I put it out, I went to sleep, and then I woke up and I was like, why did I make this? And then I deleted it. So it's always just rough when people talk to me about that, because I was like, I hadn't slept in days. I was really, really pushing myself, and it was very manic. And I regret it, and I was wrong in the video.
Even though it was only up for a few hours, that was more than enough time for a few people to download it and put it right back up on YouTube. This is a very common occurrence for creators that make controversial videos that they eventually delete, and is generally viewed as an inevitability that simply must be accepted. But sometimes, as is the case in this instance, the video's original producer will opt to file a copyright claim to get the re-uploads removed. Even though he admittedly only did it to a couple people, this was still enough to land Quinton in even deeper hot water with the community. This string of noteworthy behavior eventually caught the attention of YouTubers Lemon, Mumkey Jones, and Rusty Cage, who discussed it on their podcast, State of the YouTube. None of them had positive things to say about Quinton, but Mumkey had some particularly harsh feelings that he was not shy about expressing.
He was just being a typical soy boy f***ing cuck. Like, he's an NPC, like, through and through. He reviews Fairly Odd Parents movies and shit. Why the f*** would I care about your politics, you stupid fat cuck?
He seems like an ally, and I would not trust him to watch
child.
My sister if she was drunk and passed out.
I wouldn't trust him to babysit a child.
Whoa, you guys are giving him the enter treatment. Sheesh. I don't know what
I
to
think
say.
he lacks a personality, and he's a huge f***it.
Even though they were among the loudest and most critical voices, the hosts of State of the YouTube were far from the only people discussing this situation. A plethora of commentary channels, some of whom had been Quinton's friends just a few months prior, were now making videos refuting his statements. Hoover was largely dismissive of this negative coverage, tweeting the following on December 4th. So there's this small group of commentary bros who are all friends and decided to all make videos on me around the same time. And they keep commenting, LOL, I also made a Quinton video on each other's stuff, clearly to get views on all the vids. Like, who are they fooling? Haha, I was warned by a friend that these guys were trying to find dirt on me and that they smell blood in the water. So I expect to see some sharks coming after me. Instead, guppies. Little peeved guppies. Adorable. If it wasn't clear before, this marked the point that Quinton was well and truly alienated from the commentary community. And he clearly had no desire to change that. On December 14th, Mumkey Jones's YouTube channel was suddenly deleted, with no explanation given from the site. The community at large all banded together in support of Mumkey, as everyone understood the horrible precedent this could set for all of their careers. Everyone, that is, except for Quinton Reviews. Rather than trying to put aside their differences for an important cause, or even just staying silent entirely, he instead decided to post a tweet gloating about the channel's deletion. The backlash was swift and immediate, and Quinton quickly took the post down as he realized he had once again vastly misunderstood the situation he had thrown himself into. But even still, he understood that this was not something he could simply ignore. He had struck a nerve with his former friend group at a time when they were feeling particularly vulnerable. So in an attempt to clear the air, Quinton decided to hop on State of the YouTube to discuss every single one of his controversies thus far. Interestingly, Mumkey Jones himself was absent from this episode. While it was stated at the beginning that he was simply unavailable, some viewers suspected that maybe this had been at the request of Quinton.
I don't recall saying no, Mumkey. And maybe someone can dig up a DM. I remember getting in the call and being like, is Mumkey going to be here? And they were like, no, he's not going to be here. It was many, many years ago, so I might be wrong. But I remember being like, I don't understand why he's not here if I'm supposed to be apologizing to him. So that's my recollection of it, that he just didn't show up.
Over the course of this hour and 20-minute podcast, the three men maintained a fairly cordial, albeit somewhat uncomfortable tone as they discussed everything Quinton had said over the past few months that people took issue with. There were a few things that the ex-commentary YouTuber ceded ground on, apologizing for poking fun at Mumkey after his channel termination, and admitting that he regretted the T-Series video. However, he stood firm on his criticisms of PewDiePie, wondering why he wasn't allowed to have a nuanced take of calling out his poor behavior without being seen as supporting the mainstream media's teardown of YouTube as a whole.
I do agree that they go after him a little too harshly, but I think it's equally bad for people to assume that no one is ever allowed to criticize Felix because the mainstream media criticizes Felix. And I feel like the fact that people have been so unwilling to do this is one of the reasons he keeps making some of these mistakes.
Overall, while they were able to cover a large swath of topics and found a bit of common ground, neither side ultimately shifted their positions. The main thing many of the people in the video's comments were fixated on wasn't even the conversation.
I know they made fun of the fact that I was so close to having a breakdown that I was playing with Transformers, and so they called me Lego Guy. because it was all these clicking noises.
Additionally, it sounded as if there are a lot of segments from this podcast that were completely omitted from the final release.
But like Internet Historian was there like constantly trying to like mitigate, but he didn't record his audio, so they cut out huge chunks of our interactions because they didn't make sense.
Even though it appeared that Quinton had buried the hatchet with State of the YouTube from an outsider's perspective, that couldn't have been further from the truth. Mumkey Jones's fanbase still despised him, sending harassing and threatening messages on a daily basis, each one weighing more and more on his mental health. Things eventually hit a breaking point, and Quinton decided to message Mumkey on Twitter to air out his grievances. There was just one problem though. This wasn't the real Mumkey Jones, but rather a parody account created by a fan. The messages were quickly forwarded to the real Mumkey who, feeling no remorse, posted them on Twitter and read them out live on stream.
Hey Mumkey, just wanted to apologize for being mean to you once. And for also being such a F slur. Now I'm not going to say what this F slur is, folks, but it's a ban-worthy offense in my opinion. I think it should be. I think it's a disgusting word, and I can't believe Quinton Reviews would use that word in what he thought was a private message to me, but was actually to some random child. So he should not be surprised that now everybody is going to see this.
People don't understand the timeline because they weren't there from my perspective. The first thing that happened was that people found my parents' address, and then they started going to my parents' house and calling my parents all day, every day, and slamming on my parents' door. And so now I can't go to my parents' house. And now I'm worried about my family's safety. And now I'm worried if they're going to find my apartment and they're going to be doing that to me. I'm scared about going out in public in case I get recognized. I can't go on the internet because people are like sending me anonymous death threats. It got really heated and really bad really, really quickly. And that's when I was trying to turn to my other YouTubers to be like, how do I navigate this? And everyone was like, well, you earned this fate. You know, you. I don't want to be part of this mess. I had a couple mental breakdowns around that time, and I sent out some messages I shouldn't have. And I felt like people just weren't treating me like I was a person. You know, I was really struggling with that moment. And I just think I deserved more respect than I got, not just from Mumkey Jones, but from a lot of the people. It was just hard on me, you know, just trying to navigate, like, you know, what do you do when people are going to your parents' house? You know, how big of an apology can you give to make people just stop sending you weird messages? And it was hard on me. And like I said, it took me about 1.5 years to get through it in a stable way. And while I was unstable, I acted out in ways that weren't chill. But I feel like in the context, it was clear that I was unstable and having a breakdown in retrospect. And I just wish there had been more empathy in the moment about all that stuff that I had to go through, because it was really hard on me. Although I do regret what I said about him, and I've apologized many times, and I would still apologize.
As Quinton's mental health worsened even more, he only fell deeper and deeper into isolation as he continued making public statements which alienated his former audience and friend group. What he needed was someone to talk to, and during this time, most of that interaction came from the users of the BreadTube subreddit. For those that are unaware, the term BreadTube refers to a vaguely defined genre of YouTube content, usually characterized as long-form video essays centering around leftist topics, or at the very least made by left-leaning creators who filtered the subjects of their videos through a political lens. While many viewers have tried to define who is part of the so-called BreadTube community, most of the creators listed reject the label outright. But this did not stop Quinton from developing a fixation on it, with one particular YouTuber really striking his interest: ContraPoints. In July of 2019, Quinton uploaded a video titled, "How ContraPoints Can Save the Internet."
She is our dark queen, our glorious mother and comrade. All hail ContraPoints, for she shall lead us out of darkness.
This was a time when ContraPoints was growing in popularity in left-leaning spaces. Surprisingly, many right-leaning people even were enjoying her videos and crediting her with bringing them from the brink of extremism. This ability to reach across the aisle was probably one of the many things that made Contra so appealing to Quinton, and why he may have thought this video would go over better than it actually did. However, there were many problems that people took issue with. Those who were already fans of Contra accused him of misinterpreting or even willfully misunderstanding some of the things she was trying to do in her videos.
But out of all the characters that Natalie has envisioned for her show, perhaps the most fascinating is Tabby, a representation of Natalie's issues with how the left tends to present itself.
Death to capitalism! Hail Satan!
Now, I feel like I'm in a weird position with this character, where I know that she was intended to mock the public image that the left often has, and yet I unironically love everything about her.
The upload certainly didn't win Quinton any favors with his former commentary audience either, since he both started and concluded by once again bad-mouthing that particular group.
But I guess this one's pretty mask off. Relationship ended with the commentary community. Now BreadTube is my best friend.
But perhaps the most widely despised aspect of this video was Quinton's apparent desire to use it as a springboard into becoming friends with ContraPoints and the BreadTube community at large. He uploaded it right before departing for VidCon 2019, and opened by telling the story of how he had first met Contra at the previous year's convention. Critics accused him of coming across as desperate, and a select few even believed Quinton's desire for Contra was not strictly platonic.
I've never dated a transgender woman, but there was suddenly this meme online that's my entire internet persona was me being a predator to try and date trans people, and I was like, where did that come from? Like, that's an absurd premise. And that was the weirdest part of navigating it, was people literally being like, well, this is the guy that wants to fuck Natalie. And I was like, all right, I should not have done that video. Because I don't like this conversation.
Much like many of his other controversial uploads, this one was quickly taken down, and Contra never publicly addressed it. However, just because Quinton had been snubbed in this instance didn't mean the entirety of BreadTube had turned their backs on him. It was during this time that he became good friends with video essayist Sarah Z. The two could often be seen interacting on Twitter and collaborating in videos, as she had a reoccurring voice role in his series about the comic strip Garfield. Despite the rocky nature of the last few months, it seemed as though Quinton's social life was finally starting to settle down again. But this, unfortunately, did not last. The duo's public interactions suddenly ceased around early 2020, and they unfollowed each other on Twitter. Whatever happened between them, it apparently came on fast. Just in March of that year, Quinton had been singing Sarah's praises in his videos.
I won't linger on social media brands too long, because they've been covered really well by more thoughtful and intelligent YouTubers before.
Onlookers didn't truly take notice of this until June, when Quinton posted a new Garfield video and made a point of mentioning Sarah's absence.
I couldn't get in contact with Sarah Z, so I'll have to do the voice of Irma this time.
While it was abundantly clear that the two had fallen out, the exact reason why remained a mystery to the general public.
We hung out a few times, and I did stuff for her, and she did little cameos for me, and one day it was just weird, and I would do like charity streams, and people would be really bitchy to me in the Discords, and they'd be like, well, we can't have Sarah and Quinton on at the same time, and I was like, why? Like, I was like, what's going on? And basically the gist was, it was a person I was completely fine with and I was hanging out with, but I didn't know that well, and I liked her videos. And then one day they just didn't like me, and I was like, okay. And I found it irritating to be like, this is a charity stream, I'm here for charity. Can you guys just pretend to be nice to me for like 5 minutes? And I didn't get that level of respect from that scene. But we weren't that close. We basically just met each other at VidCon, and we messaged a handful of times, but we weren't close. But it was just weird. And it was specifically like, I very much believe it was because she became friends with other people that didn't like me. And it was just like this infectious thing.
That didn't mean there wouldn't be any public drama, though. In January 2021, Sarah tweeted a screenshot of a message she had received which read, "Hey, I figure we don't like each other for whatever reason, so I'm just gonna unfollow." She captioned this image saying, "This is weird. Please don't do this." For context, this is from another creator who has done things like publicly mention in their videos when I haven't responded to their messages. It's weird and uncomfortable, and it puts people in an awkward position. Another female video essayist named Lindsay Ellis quickly responded to Zara's tweet with her own screenshots of messages from an unknown individual who had sent a plethora of texts despite the fact that she never responded to any of them. I think we may be on the receiving end of messages from the same person. Please don't do this. Even though they kept the identity of the sender anonymous, it wasn't hard for onlookers to use context clues to know it was Quinton. These suspicions were all but confirmed when they noticed Lindsay hadn't fully cropped out the profile picture of the person she received the messages from, and the small visible sliver of the image lined up perfectly with Quinton. While Hoover didn't directly confirm or deny the rumor, he posted a number of tweets about the poor state of his mental health over the following days. "I'm feeling really down tonight. I could use some nice messages. To be honest with you, I'm having like a mild panic attack. LOL, epic. The worst part about this is going to be when it's over and I just feel cold and alone." One in particular about how he had eaten McDonald's to feel better caught traction as a meme with those who had little sympathy for his plight. "I had a mental break this week, and the thing that helped me return to normal and start eating again after 3 days was McDonald's. I said to myself, am I a good person? Do I deserve love? And the answer was no, but I did deserve McDonald's." As if this wasn't sad enough, screenshots from Quinton's private Discord server soon leaked to the internet. "Had nightmares again. I guess I'll be better sometime. I went out and stood in the freezing rain. It felt okay." One of these DMs was even about how he felt better after eating McDonald's. It's unclear who exactly leaked these images, but once they hit the public eye, there were many people who found it inappropriate for Quinton to be using his audience as a venting chamber for his mental anguish.
So a thing about the Discord chats that probably hasn't been archived is I had like a private chat room that was supposed to just be like a handful of people in the Discord that I had gotten really close with, and people who were willing to like talk me out of like wanting to kill myself, you know. And the idea was that if it was like 5 or 6 people that I actually would call my friends, that not a single one of them would leak the DMs. And it turns out I was wrong. It turns out at least one of those people was leaking DMs. And so when I was having really bad episodes and I was just talking about how depressed I was, a lot of times it was in the like private chat that was just me and a couple of the people that I considered my really good friends. Where out of context, I'm sure it seemed like I was just telling every one of my fans about the drama all day, every day. But the truth is that I shouldn't have done it at all. I shouldn't have vented to my fans, but I didn't have anywhere else to go.
Even though his reputation had been declining for several years, this was Quinton's rock bottom. Not only had he lost all of his former commentary friends, but now BreadTube, the community he had so desperately wanted to join, had turned their backs on him as well. In his episode of Fallen Titans about himself, Quinton made his stance about the people he had come to know on YouTube over the years perfectly clear.
YouTube friendships aren't real. They don't see you as human beings. They see you as a commodity to be used to further their careers. The moment they no longer see you as that, they will stop talking to you.
Was that in reference to anyone specifically?
I think it was in reference to everybody. I have spoken to my therapist about this a lot. I think there is a transactional element to a lot of YouTuber friendships where they will literally be like, "You're my buddy, you're my guy, I'm in your corner," until the moment knowing you isn't good for my career, in which case the transactional relationship no longer works for me.
That's not to say he was entirely alone though. Back in 2020, he had assembled an eclectic cast of creators from across multiple different genres of YouTube to create My Virtual VidCon 2020. A surreal comedy piece about celebrating the convention even though it wasn't being held that year due to the pandemic. This proved 2 things. 1, even though quite a few bridges had been burned, Quinton still had quite a few friends if he knew where to look. And 2, despite his declining mental health, he still had a drive to flex his filmmaking muscles beyond the standard video essay.
Hey, where the fuck are all these YouTubers coming from?
Of course! It all makes sense! There's no one less essential and more widely hated in the world than YouTubers!
This is a good opportunity to step back from the drama and talk about what was actually being uploaded to the Quinton Reviews channel during this era. As previously mentioned, back in 2018, he had uploaded his first video on a subject that ended up being a new niche for him, Garfield.
The first video I ever did that went viral that I was proud of was my first Garfield video, and I truly made that thinking no one would watch it, and it became one of my most popular videos, and I was so happy.
As the years went on, Quinton uploaded more and more videos about the lasagna-loving feline and his creator, Jim Davis. Hoover's work went far beyond surface-level analysis, and it was clear his love for the comic strip was deep and genuine. For example, in one upload, he went through the trouble of digging up Davis's early prototype version of Garfield that was previously lost media. He even made his own Garfield fan film in which he starred as John Arbuckle. These videos made Quinton a prominent voice in the small subgenre of Garftubers, proving once again that he was far from a one-trick pony.
And I think constantly about the fact that I've become a Garfield collector. And it's pretty much just because I wanted to feed into a part of the brand that actually brought me joy. You know, I'd rather be talking about Garfield than Leafy is here in iDubbbz. And so that was the first big, victory for me, that I did that video about Garfield. And it was an honest-to-God pop culture retrospective that people loved and wanted to see more of. And I think that's one of the most important things that's ever happened in my life.
But even more so than Garfield, there's another topic that Quinton is best known for covering these days.
And then I realized that for some reason, as I made videos in 2020, iCarly kept coming up because I did a video about Pawn Stars and iCarly was on Pawn Stars. And I feel like there was one or two other iCarly jokes that I just happened to make in other videos. And I said to myself, every time iCarly comes up for a second, I want to go on a 10-minute tangent about it. So why don't I just do an iCarly video?
True to his word, Quinton uploaded I Binged iCarly in June of 2021, a nearly 5-hour-long video covering the first 3 seasons of the Nickelodeon sitcom. This was a massive success, and quickly took over as the main focus of the Quinton Reviews channel for the following years. After he finished going over the remainder of iCarly in another 3.5-hour-long upload, he next set his sights on some of the other television shows produced by Dan Schneider, namely Victorious and Sam and Cat. Every one of them has over 1 million views, although even saying that undersells their success, since the most popular of these uploads is currently sitting at over 9 million views. By all accounts, these video essays had raised Quinton out of the pit he had been falling into for the past few years. It didn't matter that his old audience had turned their backs on him. He had rebounded with a new fan base, bigger and better than he had ever seen before. Something like this is practically unheard of on YouTube. The general consensus is that once a channel starts to decline, they will never be able to reach the same peak of success again. But Quinton did the unthinkable. Not only did he come back stronger than ever, but he trailblazed yet another burgeoning video format. In the wake of the iCarly series, multiple other YouTubers started making multi-hour-long breakdowns of nostalgic kid shows. But success can sometimes attract the attention of unsavory characters, and these Nickelodeon retrospectives would eventually be the catalyst for the most recent big controversy of this ongoing saga. On July 5th, 2023, a YouTuber by the name of Flower Gothic uploaded a video titled, My Experience with Quinton Reviews. She had been an editor on some of the early iCarly videos, and wanted to publicly expose him for what she perceived as poor leadership and working conditions.
Payment was not discussed until after the video was released. Hell, I didn't even know how much I would get paid until the video dropped. He offered $2,000, of which PayPal took a cut. I know I took like 2 or 3 days off while editing, but all in all, I was working 6 or 7 days a week on that mess. I didn't even know I was being underpaid until experienced editors pointed it out to me.
Most people who saw this video found Flower's gripes to be petty. She claimed to have been spending hours editing every day to get the videos done in a timely manner, but nowhere in her screenshots did she show Quinton requiring her to turn around work so quickly. The only somewhat reasonable sounding claim was that she was underpaid, but even then, critics argued that she should have negotiated more behind the scenes. Still, Quinton felt the need to respond, uploading a video to his second channel titled Responding to Everything. Even though people generally hadn't taken Flower Gothic's complaint seriously, he was still able to poke several holes into her credibility that weren't already apparent. For one, he clarified that her work was often shoddy and rushed, even when he would have strongly preferred her to take her time. But much more shocking was the revelation that she had been romantically interested in Quinton, and had been exhibiting behavior that he described as stalking when he turned her down.
The big thing was that she was just sending packages to my family. She was following me onto every social media website and trying to intimidate me. And it did get to a point that I was scared that, like, okay, if I go to a convention in Texas, she's going to show up. The other thing that happened was that after that all became public, she sent me a fake cease and desist and then a fake document implying that she was now suing me. And I had to hire a lawyer. And the lawyer was so confused, where he was like, "You're not being sued. You haven't been served. This is a fake document that's meant to look like you've been served." Just like that level of private intimidation, I think is just inappropriate. And again, with the subtext being that she created a very weird relationship with me explicitly under the subtext that she thought I would be her boyfriend.
The public response to this drama was night and day compared with just a few years earlier. While Quinton had once been ridiculed by the masses and driven into an intense depression after being accused of bad behavior by women, he was now able to stand tall, calmly defend himself, and come out on top. Even people like Turkey Tom, who had harshly criticized him in the past, came out in support of Quinton. No other event of the past few years better demonstrates the growth of Quinton Reviews both as a person and a public figure than this. As for Flower Gothic, even though she had deactivated comments and ratings on her video, she's still kept it public, editing the description to read, "Yeah, no, I'm standing by this. F*** you." With the help of his other more reliable editors, Quinton continued to release new installments of his Nickelodeon series to wild success. One element of these uploads that caught the attention of audiences was their length. Each new video seemed to be longer than the last, with the record belonging to The Collapse of Sam and Cat at 9.5 hours long. As a YouTuber myself that has made long uploads, I can't understate how much of an undertaking that is. This ended up being something of a double-edged sword though. While the outrageous runtimes were part of what made people notice these videos in the first place, there were some who simply accused Quinton of padding rather than actually filling those hours with substantive analysis or entertainment. Ironically, in his Every Gamer from Mars video from years back, he made fun of me for padding my content. But again, I'm not bitter at all. What was your thought process behind trying to one-up yourself in terms of length of each of these videos?
I feel like it wasn't purposeful at first. I think during Sam and Cat, I definitely fed into it a little bit. I think it was less about length and more about looking at the project from an outside perspective and looking at it all as one video. And I will say, the main thing I've strived to do with these videos, in terms of the longness, is I've always strived that you could cut them up into smaller videos and they'd still be watchable, which I think is important. In my head, it was justifiable as long as it was like, you know how some YouTubers like Wendigoon will like do like a full year content and then they'll upload it as one video? I said to myself, I'm just skipping the middleman. I'm just doing the compilation video.
If we're talking about long Quinton Review videos though, there is one that stands above all and makes The Collapse of Sam and Cat look like a TikTok by comparison. The 38-hour retrospective on the Beverly Hillbillies, featuring Quinton's father as the host and narrator. This video that took months of passion and hard work to create was finally released to the world on April 3rd, 2024. There's something poetic about Quinton, whose love of filmmaking had spawned by watching his father's work, now teaming up with his dad to create his most ambitious project yet. However, mere days after being posted, it was taken down by Paramount via copyright claim. While he tried to appeal, he was struck down, receiving a threatening email from the studio's legal team.
Like, I'm sure you've gone through that same thing where you get a takedown and it's either a bot or it's very non-personal. I had never gotten a personal email that was very directed, like, we are conscious of you and we will take legal action. That was weird to me and it was scary and I was shaken up and I was so depressed. We'd worked on that video, I think, for 3 years and it was all going to be gone. And I called Dad immediately and I told him, and I regret because it was the night he was working the next morning. And this is what I think is great about my dad. He wasn't shaken up or anything. He wasn't in the state of shock I was in. He was just like, okay, when do I start working on fixing this? When do we start working on the new edit?
Recently, things have been relatively quiet for the Quinton Reviews channel. The latest development was that the Beverly Hillbillies video went back up online on April 4th, 2025. This time clocking in at an even more mind-boggling 42 hours with fair use in mind. He also recently teased another massive collaborative project with his father and a bigger return to YouTube beyond that. Other than that, he's been uploading a plethora of shorts, both original and clips from the Nickelodeon videos. If I had to sum up the career of Quinton Hoover in a word, it would be unprecedented. Not only did he manage to build back a seemingly dead YouTube channel stronger than ever before, but he also managed to redefine multiple different genres in the process. There will be some who will never get past his political opinions and the self-admittedly poor way he chose to express them in the past. But it's hard to deny the one-of-a-kind nature of Quinton Reviews.
I wish that I hadn't live streamed my 20s to the entire internet. Because I think a lot of people have a difficult time finding themselves and finding their identity in their 20s. It's just that when you become a YouTuber as a teenager, that is live broadcasted, and people feel like they have some right to your life or your drama or your situations. And it's just really weird because I constantly think to myself, you know, a lot of people in their 20s struggle and have falling outs and find new friend groups. And it's not dramatic because that's what your 20s can be like. And I guess the biggest thing is that I'm constantly trying to be a better man. And I'm fine with looking back at my mistakes, as long as the subtext isn't, because I made mistakes, I have no right to exist. I think the story should be, I made mistakes, and so I should learn from them. And I think I have. I think I've really tried to, even though it's been a hard journey. But I'm so happy where I am right now. I feel so stable, and I'm so grateful for the life that my fans have given me. And there's nothing else in the world I'd rather be doing than what I do for work. And I think I'm very blessed and privileged for that.